So I just had like a shorter tafsir booklet, really. That's just to explain generally the meaning. And now I've got this other book which is more detailed. I can share the books, inshallah, the name of the titles after. So there is one part, I don't want to read the whole context because in the beginning of the surah, they always explain, how it was revealed or what's the context there. And I already shared the story from one of the articles about Prophet ﷺ being in the cave of Hira and really receiving revelation. But I think very interesting part of the story of that when it's narrated is that Khadija radiallahu anha actually accompanied the Prophet ﷺ to Khadija's cousin's house, and his name is Waraqa ibn Nawfal. He was actually old by that point, and during this time of the period of ignorance, which is the pre-Islamic Arabia period, okay, Waraqa had become Christian. He used to write the scriptures in Arabic, so he was quite religious, and he would actually write these from the gospel, because back then this is how you copy the text and you distribute it. He would write from the gospel in Hebrew as much as Allah willed for him to write, and he was then an old man and had lost his eyesight. So this is the time when the Khadija radiallahu anha takes the Prophet ﷺ there, and he says to him, "Oh my cousin, listen to the story of your nephew." And Waraqa asked, "Oh my nephew, what have you seen?" The Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he described what he saw. Okay, that was the angel Jibril, and he gets the revelation, and after he's leaving the mountain, he actually sees the angel Jibril fill the sky, so it's like completely. So it's like a very shocking moment, and he's really thinking, oh, I must have, maybe I lost my mind, something is really wrong. He was kind of afraid. He was very confused. He wasn't sure, is this real or not? And Khadija consulted him, and took him to Waraqa, who has knowledge about these things. So he says, this is the namos. This is from the Greek nomos, indicating revealed law. So it says this is from that, and that God sent to Moses. The namos that God sent to Moses, the law, this is from that. And he says, I wish I were young and could live until the time when your people will drive you out. This is Waraqa's answer. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, will they drive me out? Meaning to drive somebody out, meaning obviously that this is actually when we're talking about when they have to leave Mecca on hijrah, because the people basically drive them out, meaning they make it impossible for them to live there. They don't want anything to do with them, the Muslims, and they kind of force them to leave. Ways they have to run away. So he says, will they drive me out? And Waraqa replies, yes. No man has come with something similar to what you have brought, but that he was treated with hostility and enmity. And if I should remain alive till that day, then I would firmly support you. So subhanAllah, Waraqa has this wisdom about the prophets, right? And he understands that this is going to be a difficult time, that it's going to be challenging for the believers. But he believes in Allah, and he believes in the Prophet ﷺ already at this point. And he says that he wishes that he could be there, because he knows like it will be a great time and the supporters will have much blessing. So I'm sure because of this knowledge that we can see here as well, he says that I would firmly support you. So the surah begins with this injunction to recite, is telling him to recite, and followed by the talk about mankind in general, and then more specifically about those who prevent others from practicing the religion, and then the concluding is all about the challenges to those who call upon what is other than God to protect them. So like not the challenges, but like challenging those people. So basically we know that, so this is the sign of revelation, the sign that he's a prophet. This is the first revelation. He goes to Waraqa tells him, this is going to happen because it's happened to all the prophets before you. And the rest of the surah, you can see like the the fight between those two people, like you are praying and then someone would stop you, and then it's very, very interesting, like how you have this all in the same surah, like the first point of which from Allah, the first five, where it's like proof, Allah says who he is and proving like he's the Lord, he created, he's most noble and taught mankind everything. He didn't just create us physically, but everything that we know, it's from him, even internally. And then the surah carries on to say this conflict between the people who will not believe at all and will actually try to stop those who are believers, and then between the believers, how again everything is connected in the surah, subhanallah. So I was thinking maybe I will not okay, I will go through, there's only like 2 pages, okay, of the tafsir, so we can inshallah continue. So again, when we look at the first 5 verses, so in this verses there is obviously the discussion of creation, and that obviously Allah is the one who created everything. Again, all that everybody who's honored by knowledge, they are that have the benefit of the knowledge. Everything is from him. This actually differentiates mankind from the angels, because like we can make some decisions ourselves, right? So we learn through a time period and we make our own decisions, and actually whereas the angels, they are given whatever it is that they are specifically needed to have knowledge, and it's not just about knowledge, but they just follow the command of Allah. So the creation of the human being and knowledge are related in the first revelation, because the human beings are created for knowledge of Allah and his creation, and Allah teaches Adam alayhi salam, and thus all humanity the names of all things. So this was in Surah Baqarah in the 31st ayah, when he says that he creates Adam alayhi salam, and he's teaching him the name of everything. And so before commanding, providing laws and judging, this is what he does, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then according to some, the mention of recitation precedes that of writing, because although both are means of conveying knowledge, there could be speech without writing, but not writing without speech. And thus all through recite could be, like iqra, also be translated as read. So it's either they translate it as read or they translate recite. And recite is the better option, because the Prophet ﷺ was not given something to read, and it is reported to have been he's reported to have been unlettered. So when we say recite, so this is interesting, because actually if you were to meet someone who is not a Muslim, it really depends on the person if they really understand what recite means, because recitation is so specific, I mean in the English language at least, and I think a lot of people don't really have this practice anymore to recite something. So recitation nowadays, I think people use more for poetry, that they like memorize something and then they repeat it. But yes, recitation is very specific, and I think it's such an interesting thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals Quran in a time when the Sahaba, I mean, the Arab Peninsula they're very famous for their poetry. They love this. And the Quran is the perfect poetry, let's say, like the linguistically and all those devices you would learn in poetry, it's in the Quran. And then there is this beautiful melody attached to it, the way that we recite the Quran, which is why it's important to try to learn the recitation parts. Like if you're memorizing some ayahs, maybe try to listen to someone who is reading, and in a melodious way, because this is how the Quran is supposed to be read. So if you can make extra time, let's say you spend, I don't know, like even if you make a habit and say 5 minutes, even just 5 minutes every day, that's beautiful. Try to take your time, even if you read less, but read it in a beautiful way, to really respect the Quran. Yeah. Anyways, so several verses refer to different periods of So the periods of time of gestation, I can't pronounce this word, but it's basically between when you have the baby. So basically, as the mother gets pregnant and then the child is growing inside the mother's womb. So there are these references. Gestation, yes, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I could not pronounce it. So um here in these verses, because we have the mention of Allah created us from the blood clot, which appears to be the third stage in the most extensive Quranic account, because we have in the 22nd surah, O mankind, if you are in doubt concerning the resurrection, remember we created you from dust, then from a drop, then from the blood clot, then from a lump of flesh, formed and unformed, that we may make clear for you, and we cause what we will to remain in the womb for a term appointed. So actually, Allah does describe, we have many different these scientific images and metaphors in the Quran. So this is quite a miracle. And here also part of it is mentioned. So, and then obviously there are other ayahs. So I will send this page for you, and if you want, you can read other ayahs as well. So it's creates and referring to that the mankind is created in the most beautiful stature. That's also in Surah 95, the previous one. And then he will be returned to the lowest of the low, right? So this was in At-Tin, the fig surah, the one before. And so, there's this connection actually. If you go deep into meanings of Quran, and many times you will find a link between the surahs somehow. Like there's a perfect placement for each surah, because here, for example, At-Tin and Al-Alaq, they're linked by, for example, this part, for example, the context that Allah created mankind, how he created them, and the different stages that we have of our lives. And it's all depending on Allah and how much time we may have, or maybe we have less time, or maybe we have more time, or we have babies who are not even born, and then babies who are born but then they die younger, and then maybe children who have, you only live until you're a child or a teenager or a young adult, or maybe you will live until you are 90. So subhanallah, you never know. This is kind of a reminder that this is out of our control, and it's only Allah who knows those things and decides those things. So this is very interesting, and the fact that you can always find the perfect placement for each ayah and for each Quran surah. If you were to take out a part from the Quran, it would be strange, because it's like something is missing. It's just complete together, mashallah, subhanallah. Okay, so here, recite for your Lord the most noble. So in pre-Islamic Arabia, nobility and magnanimity, this karama was considered the highest of all virtues, implying an unblemished pedigree or virtuous character traits, or like unbounded generosity. And so, in accordance with this third quality, it can also be understood to mean recite for your Lord is the most generous. And this is why they translate in English different ways, because karama, bismik ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق. So this so ربك الأكرم, okay, akram and karama. So this word, and so it's not just about like somebody that you look up to is really noble and mashallah, but they should have some qualities that their actions, their character is really good, pure, and that they have a lot of generosity as well. So Allah he's here, it's translated not just as somebody that is in high esteem, but also somebody who's very generous. So it's kind of very interesting that you have these two meanings together, because a lot of times you can find in human beings, you will find human beings who are considered very noble and very great, but then actually they treat people in a very awful way. So it's really beautiful how these two meanings are merged here in Arabic. And so Allah blessings human beings with the greatest of blessings, i.e. creation, and the revelation. So here, in pre-Islamic poetry, karim means noble or generous and was said of people but not of God. So the Quranic usage of the term introduces an aspect of God, which is unknown to the pagan Arabs. So this is actually a way as well that Allah teaches the people who are not people of the book about who is Allah really, because they believe in Allah, right? They have a sense of God, and they actually believe in many different many different idols. So but they do have a sense of Allah. So that was not completely new, but the concept, like, okay, but who is he? Because if you believe in God, but then you believe in lots of other idols and maybe some other gods, it's like very, very complex image of what's happening, what's going on then really, what is the actual context of the unseen. So if then you reduce this to no, there's only Allah, then Allah builds the image of himself for those pagan Arabs at the time, and for us to learn from. I remember sitting in one Aqidah class here in Hungary, actually, one of the teachers, and he was saying that 80% Aqidah is the science of our faith, right? So 80% of Aqidah, he said, is all about Allah, subhanallah. So that it's so important for us in our faith to focus on who is Allah, how can we connect with him, and what's our purpose in relation to him, and kind of like all his aspects and characteristics. That's why we have this also the hadith about the person who really learns the 99 names of Allah and they will go to Jannah. But learning is not just, memorization, it's knowing him really, because the point is sometimes we read, I think, hadith maybe, and you think, oh, okay, because I just memorized 99 names. But it's not because you memorized them, It's about that because you know it. And when you know it, it changes you. The idea is that you should, when you memorize these things, it should change you because you understand the meaning. You have a deeper connection with Allah. You will use those names. You will actually think about them. So the next time you walk on the street, something very simple, you see a tree. Maybe if you don't believe in anything, you will see, okay, it's tree, nobody cares, let's move on. If you believe in Allah, you'll be like, wow, Allah made this tree with this big trunk and huge branches, and it's winter, and it seems like, everything died, but then in the spring it will all be brought to life again. And how many years this tree endures in one place, and how many things it must have seen or been through, in a sense. And you might reflect, So the idea is that we gain the knowledge, but don't gain knowledge to like repeat it back. Gain it to know, to understand. So I think wisdom, it's so important. You can meet many people who will have knowledge about something, but they won't have the wisdom to go with it, and then it kind of feels really empty. It's really interesting. Like, okay, there is some practical aspects of having that knowledge, and it's useful for them, not useless for them, but it is useful. But however, they are missing a great part that could come with this knowledge, a sense of wisdom which would help them in the long run. And so for the fourth, who taught by the pen and taught man what he did not know, Allah teaches the human being. So this is beautiful because here we have many ayahs in the Quran. For example, in the Surah 14, ayah 1. And we have Surah, I think ayah 1 and 5. And then we have Surah 33 and ayah 43. And the others, there is a quote here, just a translation, out of darkness into light. Okay, so we use this here too. The human being learns, and they can be brought out from the darkness into the light. And again, I would say that, you have like some knowledge, and then you have like wisdom. And I think the wisdom can be more powerful for this as well. So it's like extension and continuation of his unbounded generosity, Allah's unbounded generosity. Some say that pens are of three principal types. The first, corresponding to the logos or intellect, is the one that Allah commanded to write all that would be until the day of resurrection. Okay, so we have also this the divine pen, which Allah writes down everything that would ever happen, and then or makes the pen write it down. The second one is the angels, they record the deeds of the human beings. Okay, so we have that, for example, in Surah 18, ayah 49. And the third type are those with which human beings write. So according to some, man indicates Adam alayhi salam, whom said, well, we already looked at this, which that Allah taught him all the names of everything. And then others say that it indicates the Prophet ﷺ, because Allah says that Allah has sent down onto you the book and wisdom and has taught you what you did not know. And Allah's bounty towards you is great indeed. This is in the Surah 4 and then ayah 113. So this is also a way of understanding. But of course, this is the beauty of the Quran. You have two meanings, two different meanings for the same concept. I mean, same verses. We can read this to refer to Adam alayhi salam, or read this to refer to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And how beautiful that Adam alayhi salam, of course, he's unlettered in the beginning. Everything he knows, Allah teaches him. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's unlettered. He doesn't know how to read, And this is something that Allah he gives him the book, the revelation. So you have the book and you have the wisdom, and how beautiful that actually these two are also again connected. But also some commentators take that taught man. It means the manner in which Allah teaches all human beings, not only the prophets, peace be upon them. So Allah teaches by the pen can also be seen as an allusion to the divine intellect, inscribing knowledge upon the tablet of the human soul. And for more, and then obviously there is like other symbolisms can be related to the pen, but we'll not go into that. So it's like also the fitrah, right? We are born into fitrah. We are born into like the belief that Allah exists, or we are born with some internal knowledge about somehow the connection to Allah and the unseen. There is something within the human being already. So Allah's already placed that in us. When we are born, even if we're not taught anything, you will find I really love this story, but I don't think the person that told me would. I'm not gonna make it. I don't want to say who they were, but someone that I know, they told me once that when they were a child, they didn't know. They were very, very young, and this is a person who converted later on, by the way. So they were not taught by their family about Allah. And they would, however, have this fitra inside, and so they begin like making little duas kind of, and like looking out the window and seeing like a beautiful star, and then they were making this dua and like kind of really hopeful, and that kind of childlike connection. When you see a Muslim child, like I have some friends of like younger kids, and you see them praying to Allah, it's so genuine, and they are so cute, and they have this like really pure way of connecting and just speaking to Allah like a good friend or something, trying to make a connection. And that is within each human being. So if you were to try to take that out, that obviously the environment, the society around us, they can shape us. You can either confirm and teach the child that, yeah, of course Allah exists, and this feeling that you have, this need for that connection, this need for connection beyond the physical human beings around you, it's totally valid, and it's because Allah exists, and it's because you want to connect with Him, your soul wants to connect with Him. So you can either confirm it and make it strong and make that child's faith strong, or a person can take it away like, oh, that nonsense. And if there's an atheist who doesn't believe in anything, they can tell the child, no, like there's no, like, I don't know, stars, fairies, gods, anything, like we're just here and we'll die and that's it, and can really take it away. So this is why Allah says that He created us on the fitrah, on this belief, but then the environment changes the person into a, I don't know, Christian, Jew, or whatever it is, a Muslim. It's actually that the religion itself is learned from the outside, right? Because these are something practiced by people. So I think that's very interesting here too. So anyways, let's move on. No, indeed, mankind transgresses because he sees himself self-sufficient. Indeed, to your Lord is the return. Have you seen the one who forbids a servant when he prays? We already read this part. These verses are, again, they are revealed, related to Abu Jahl. He was leader of Quraysh. He rejected the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He tried to hinder the practice of Islam. So here, well, he says in ayah 6, Kalla. Again, it's emphatic particles here in the language. It implies that despite the great blessings of creation and knowledge, people deny them. They are ungrateful. That they are disbelievers and they rebel. So here in the context, rebelliousness can also be seen as an allusion to those who rebel against Allah what he teaches. So they rebel against Allah and they rebel against the teachings. And ayah 7, beyond need is literally like self-sufficient. It conveys negative connotations as viewing oneself self-sufficient, so I already mentioned before. And then also like the root of the rebelliousness. So this idea that, no, I don't need any help, basically. I can do it all myself because I am that great. That's the point here. And this is not a positive thing, because in Islam we do have a positive value, that to be somehow self-sufficient, in the sense of don't be rather the person who helps others than, right, to be the upper hand, not the lower hand. So be the one who's generous, like has enough for himself, his family, and give. And also rather than being the somebody who's always like at the mercy of others and having to be cared for by others. That is the teaching here. Of course, I do want to mention it's not the same context for men and women in the Islamic teaching, as men are the one who take care of women, for example. So this is very interesting, like can be looked into more deeply about like how to understand self-sufficiency in Islam, to the point that what part is positive, what is not positive anymore, and obviously differences between the genders, but also still as a woman you can have some level of self-sufficiency and still it can be good. So even though in an ideal world there are reliable men that the women can count on and that they will be taken care of by them, but in real life we see that many times many women don't have people who care for them, and they have to learn to be far more self-sufficient. And so this is where we have now like a lot of obviously in society where obviously both men and women work similar jobs and things like this. And it's necessary for especially people who don't have that support. And then we kind of talk about lots of different social issues in general, but this is also something important to consider. So obviously many of the teachings in the Quran can be applied to anyone, but in an idealistic Islamic view, we do have communities work together, communities look out for each other, so no one is really truly alone because they have the support. So I think that's important to mention here. Anyhow, in the 8th ayah, so again, return to God. Allah is among the most central themes of the Quran. So here he is saying, indeed you will return to Allah. So that the return to Allah is the most essential, the reminder that it matters what you do here, because this is not the last final life. So imagine, again, as I said, like the example of the atheist person is like, okay, it doesn't matter, you could just do whatever here and that's it, like you just have this, we don't have anything else. He will teach, or she will teach the children that no, there's nothing more beyond that. And I was in fact here saying there's something more, and you're missing that. And the next verses are usually understood, again, direct reference to Abu Jahl preventing the Prophet ﷺ from praying at the Kaaba. And then the following, like from 11 and 14. So I will scroll down here. Have you seen if he is upon guidance or enjoins righteousness? Have you seen if he denies and turns away? Does he not know that Allah sees? These are taken to rebuke Abu Jahl again. Do you have the capacity to judge the Prophet ﷺ? Is that he's guided or not? It's again we already discussed at this point. And then 15 to 16 again, the answer to that we discussed that no, of course you do not know really, because you're missing that guidance. And here they link the Surah 55 ayah 41. The guilty shall be known by their marks, and they shall be seized by the forelock and by the feet. This is in the hereafter. And from Quranic perspective, there is no creature that crawls, but that he holds it by its forelock. This is Surah 11, ayah 56. So again, the control from there. And we already mentioned, you already said that biologically speaking, the prefrontal cortex and that part of the brain, this front part of the brain, which is also responsible for those conscious decisions or lying, the sinning, which is mentioned in the ayah. So this is all linked there. And finally, we have these final, so the 17, 18, call his associates, we will call the angels. Here, the one who has these associates or cohorts, these is seen by the most as a reference to, again, other members of Quraysh, and according to who supported Abu Jahl. And according to Ibn Abbas, the Prophet ﷺ was praying when Abu Jahl came to him and said, "Did we not warn you about this?" The Prophet ﷺ went to him and reproached him, and Abu Jahl retaliated by saying, "Indeed, you know very well that there is no one in Mecca who has more guards than me." Right? So he's like these protectors, whatever. And as a response, Allah revealed ayah 17 and 18. Ibn Abbas is said to have commented that by Allah, had he called, Allah would have sent the guards of hell against him. So basically, this is a very real moment in time. It's not just, that's the beauty here, that you can generalize this to somebody who's doing these evil deeds and trying to stop people of faith and lying and sinning and being disrespectful, and Allah saying, well, there is hellfire, there are real angels there, and you can gang up on the Muslims, you can gang up on the believers and who submit to Allah, but Allah is far more powerful. You do not understand the army he has. And then you can also understand in the context, like very real context, that Abu Jahl is threatened that you should really watch out what you're doing, okay? Because this is not going to end well for you if you continue this way. And so the last final one, no, do not obey him, but prostrate and draw near to Allah. So again, it's either to like rebuke, to tell off Abu Jahl, or an address directly to the Prophet and his followers, indicating that they should pay no attention to Abu Jahl and his threats, and they should still persist to prostrate to Allah, obey him. Not is echoed in another surah 68 ayah 8. So obey not the deniers, those who deny. And then more generally, the verses can be taken in indication that people should not heed any who deny religion or the efficacy of prayer, and should continue to prostrate and draw near through prayer, for that is the means by which one becomes close to Allah. And according to hadith, the closest that the servant can be to his Lord is when he is prostrating. And this is like the spiritual significance of prostration. And this is one of the 15 verses after the recitation, of which, we do the prostration. So this is all the explanation from my end. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal-Asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihat wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bis-sabr. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.